the same upper tempo fight with either using hit points or hit dice to see what would happen. This is Swords and Wizardry one, right? I also want to make mention of the fact that the first video in the series was the skill check comparison. Now, if you want to go back, that link's in the description too as well. That starts this talk, right? That's about 20 minutes long. And then the last one's this one, which I kind of compare the ideal between D&D dice granularity and kind of like showing you how the more choices you have, actually there's like an overload, and we can talk about that another time. But really, there's a rule that you can only get essentially about 5 things in your head. It's actually 7 plus or minus 2, right? So that's the ideal thing for grasping things in mental comparison. There's actually an article about it, which is sort of fascinating, and I can actually show you the article real quick before we actually start this thing. The magic number of 7, and this is kind of interesting. And they calculate that this is the point which the brain, it gets over-choiced, and it takes longer to do things. So this is there's Miller's Law, and you can go in this whole thing and look at this, and it's a very fascinating thing. It's at the end. The link for this talk is actually in the description. You click on that, go back and hyperlink this. You can learn all about this, which is really fascinating. So you might want to ask yourself when you start doing D&D, why are people taking so long? Well, you've over-choiced them. Right. So it depends on what kind of game. You want a fast game or a slow game. That's all this is. And I'm going to show you this big thing about granularity, and you're going to see the punchline at the end. It's actually kind of interesting. Right. So first of all, as descriptors, I assume that a large part of my audience is probably around my age. I don't know, maybe not. And they're all into OSR games because that's kind of what I pitch basically. And one thing you got to do is, for some people just seeing this for the first time, what is White Box? Well, it's a really simple version of D&D, the first iteration, more or less. The original book that was put out as a rethink, this is Merv Brigg put this one out, and Matt Finch had a lot to do with this. This came out, this because of the OLG, and then Charlie Mason picked up and made this thing, and it's really, really nice. And obviously, sometimes when I don't want them to use a thief class, I got 4 of these I push around the table, and then when I want thief class, I put that, and then of course I got the Omnibus by James Bond. It's my favorite game to actually play because it's so quick and fast, and people get into it. But essentially, it just comes down to 2 dice. You have a D20 and a D6. It covers everything. Okay, so when I found out that I have like these people, my friends that play once a month or whatever like that, if they have a multitude of dice, it gets really confusing about which one to throw. If it's just 2 dice, it can't really mess it up. I'll be honest with you. It's that one or throw that one. How easy is that, right? So then we go into Dungeons & Dragons, the 5th iteration, this thing. There's a multitude of dice, depending on what you're doing, and some you're adding to certain things. And therefore, every time you do that, you just create more slow in the glass. I mean, it just becomes, and now people like different kind of dice. It's fine. That you can do that too. But when I'm playing with people, I want them to come over and just kind of get immersed in the game right away. I don't want to have to tell them, no, that's not a D10, that's the D8. That's one of the biggest mistakes. D8 and D10s look almost the same to everybody. So this is something I found sort of fun, is just the D20, D6 moves the game pretty quickly, right? But let's do this. In the last video, I made, which was this one, where we actually did this long comparison. I'm using the same guys, so just letting you know, I have a Swords and Wizardry fighter, and I have a 5th edition fighter, and I kind of went through the whole thing, kind of broke a lot of stuff down. But I could go a little further with this. I know that these guys get the 5th edition gets a buff, because if it's human, everybody gets +1 proficiency in these 2 different categories, and that's kind of where we're standing, all right? So I'm using this for my example, so this is really, really important. It could be different if you're doing a different thing, but this, I stay consistent because I'm comparing data. That's what I'm doing, right? So I'm going to do a brief description of these 2 different things. The first one is the White Box fighter, He gets, for his hit dice, it's just a 6-sided dice. So he gets 6 plus his Constitution bonus. His Constitution is 15, so he gets a +1. So his hit points is, for a first level guy, is 6 plus 1 plus another 1 means 8 hit points. That's all he gets, Contrast that to the 5th edition. It's D10 plus his Constitution. He gets full hit points. Once again, he gets a 2 because he has a 15. So he gets 12, right? I'm going to do a big comparison of things at the end, so you don't have to memorize any of these numbers to see what's going on. His damage, and we're going to use not a 2-handed weapon, just single-handed weapon, is D6 plus his strength, which is +1 maximum, right? For the 5th edition, it's damage, his ability plus his strength. So his strength is pretty intense. He's got a 17, so it's up to 4 is what it's going to be. So his strength is actually going to be 3 for him, right? So he doesn't have 18, but he's got a +3 because he's got a strength of 17, right? So this is kind of like one of these things you already can see the inflation with 5e. Everybody already knows this, so we're not uncovering something new, right? Base hit bonuses are kind of interesting because the fighter, if we have non-magic weapons, his climb in, of course, we're talking about white box here. He gets a +1 to his hit, second, third, fifth, sixth, eighth, ninth. By the time he gets ninth level, he has a +6 to hit, plus his original, because of his strength, gives him a +7 to hit. Where the fighter over here, besides his original, right, +2 because of his, +3 because of his strength, right? I think I actually did this wrong, but no, that's all right. He gets a +2 at first, +3 is now at fifth, and +4 at ninth. So I think that's either +6 total or +7. I think I might be a little messed up there, but that's okay, right? So, but a first level fighter, okay, his increments for doing this, is at first level he's going to get a +5 to hit because he gets his strength plus his ability modifier is +5. So I know that number right there is totally wrong. Plus total to hit. But anyways, first level fighter in white box, he gets a total of just +1 to hit. So obviously you can see there's a big inflation between these two when they start getting into their fight. But just looking at the damage they're going to cause. So a damage obviously is a D6 in white box. So you're talking about 6 maximum, right? +1 because of his strength. And if that's the case, it's 7, right? It's 2 or 7. 2 is the minimum, 7 is the highest. You just take the average of the two and you get 4.5. I did the same thing with the 5e fighter. He's going to either get a 4 or he can get 11. So I just add them together to take the average at 7.5. That's going to come into play. That's the reason I'm showing you this, right? Now, this is where it gets kind of interesting. Let's take a look at the monsters, right? I just picked 2, goblins and orcs, because they're everywhere, right? They're endemic in this game, right? A goblin in white box is small. He's got a small armor class, and his hit dice is 1 - 1. Now, I took the average, which would be a hit dice in white box is just 6 hit points. It's a 6-sided dice. Subtracted 1 from it. So let's say he's got 2 hit points. Usually that's what they got, right? So, but everything else is going to stay the same here. I put a little guy in here so you can see what it looks like. And the goblin in 5e is a little different. He gets 7 hit points, where the other guy would get 2. He was going to get 7. So I did this breakdown here, make it easy. Armor class is 13, 2 hit points. He doesn't get any bonus to hit, but his damage is going to cost 3 points, which is half of whatever a sword would be, right? Where 5e, his armor class is 15, 7 hit points, +4 to hit. His damage is 5 hit points. And that's according to the information up here, right? Now, let's take a look at these two. This is the hit comparison, a fighter against a goblin. Okay, so this is my fighter attacking the goblin. So he has to hit an armor class of 12, right? So he must roll 11 or higher because he gets a +1, which means he has a 50% chance. Now, how do I do that count? That's easy, right? He's got to roll 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. It's 10. 10 times 5, 50%. It's easy, right? And his average damage is 4.5. So one hit is going to take out a goblin if he has 2 hit points. Now, you can botch it. Even if he had a botch roll, he's a fighter. He's going to hit him because they only got 2 hit points. That's the minimum, right? Let's look on the other side of this coin. 5th edition fighter, right? His to hit a goblin of AC of 15, he must roll a 10 or higher, right? So once again, that means he has to roll 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 11 times 5 is 55%, okay? Now, keep in mind this thing that's down here, it says 5% increase. I give this compared, it's the chance increase is, yes, it's a 5% chance increase comparatively to hit. I'll look at it differently at the very end, but that's what's going on, right? And once again, it only takes 1 hit to knock this guy out if your average damage from a hit is 7.5. So this is pretty similar, right? How about the goblins? Okay. For a goblin to hit an arm class, and this is weird, chainmail in white box is 14, chainmail in 5th edition 16, right? And that's kind of where it is. They both don't get the advantage of dexterity, so that kind of works out good. There's no bonus, so he's got to hit a 7 out of 20. When I'm saying 7, I can go 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. That's 7, right? I'm going to stop doing that because obviously I'm making sense with this. So there's 7 times 5 is 35% chance to actually hit his target, okay? And his average damage is just going to be 3 points, right? Looking at the 5th edition guy, He has to hit AC 16, but he has a +4, which means he has to roll a 12 or higher, which means he gets 9 out of 20. So there's a 45% chance to hit. Average damage is 7 hit points. That's a 10% increase. Okay. Right, it's just simple math when you really get down to it. Right. He's going to be doing twice as much damage, right? Over twice as much damage based on the character comparison, right? Let's look at these orcs, right? Got a nice little picture of an orc here. I mean, you can read this spreadsheet here, but I'm going to go right into this. White box, they have armor class of 13. Same with 5e. That's interesting, right? His hit points are 3. Hit points are 15. Look at that. 15 hit points in 5e. Who'd have thunk it? And I was wondering, wow. Okay. 0 to hit, he gets a +5 to hit. His damage is 3. His damage causes 9. These are not to be played with. They really made these guys a lot stronger than you would do like in, another game, right? But let's flip through and see what we got going on. All right? If you're trying to hit an orc as a white box fighter, you must roll a 12 or higher, which gives you a 45% chance. If, and this is interesting, 5e, you try to hit it, you have to roll an 8 or higher because you get a +5 to your roll, which means a 65% chance. That's a 20% increase in your ability to hit this guy, right? But once again, the average damage is 4.5, so one hit's going to drop this guy. Where this guy is average damage 7.5 hit points, it's going to require 2 hits to take out 15 hit points. Now, that's with, proper rollage, right? So that's something to think about, right? I'm going to bring us all back up at the end. So how about them smacking you, right? So for the orc to hit an AC of 14, he gets no bonus, so it's a 7 out of 20, a 35% chance to hit. His average damage, because he gets no bonus on the strength nut, it's just 3 hit points. Same thing as the goblin. Where this guy, check him out, he's going to get basically a +5 bonus to hit 11, which means he has a 50% chance to hit. So actually, they're much more deadly, in a sense, 15% more likely to hit you in 5e. And his average damage is going to go 9 hit points, which is 200% increase, right? So that's going to be incredible, right? So let's look at this. I like this because I'm going to break this down. And for those that like math, this is the formula I'm using. I'm taking a number, comparing to original, using original. So I use the smaller number as my original number, right? So in the first case, 5e gets a +5 to hit, where white box is only +1. So there's actually a 400% increase, right? So basically it's 5 minus 1 is 4. 4 divided by 1 is 4, but that be for percentage should be 400%. I'm not going to do that every time, just doing it that one time. So the hit points is a 50% increase. I highlighted red because that means it correlates to 5e. And then for armor class, it's a 14% increase in the strength of that armor when you're comparing 5e to white box. Now, if we look at this, just damages from the sword. The damage from a sword, obviously with the strength and everything going on, 86% more or increase compared to white box. 5e is much stronger, right? And the minimum damage is 100% higher, and the average damage is 67% higher, right? I'm going to drop that formula. You've seen it twice. You don't need to see it again, right? But look at this part. This is where it gets weird, okay? So the 5e there's always an increase. We know it's the power thing that goes up. But what I'm saying is because they're both tiering at the same rate, the goblin and the fighter, or the orc and the fighter, the end result is kind of wash. It's just a wash. When you talk about granularity, that's what I'm trying to put across. It's like it's almost meaningless to some degree because both are going to be wiping each other out. But let's look at it. So compare these two numbers. Basically, it's 55 minus 50 divided by 50 is 10% increase. So to hit it's a 10% increase to hit that goblin for the 5e character, right? 30% higher to be hit by him, though. So that's a 30% increase to get hit by that goblin. So, well, that's kind of interesting. And the goblin's damage is 133% more compared to, say, the white box character. So that's kind of like you're thinking, well, you raise this, you're raising that. So it's kind of like, and I know Professor Dungeoncraft talks about all this, but the idea behind it is let's look at the data. I'm not just taking your word for it. Let's look at the data. That's kind of where it's a data-driven dungeon is what I'm doing. I should change the title of my thing, data-driven dungeon. Anyways, back to what it was. But this is what's really weird. How many hits can a fighter take from a goblin? And this is kind of splayed out. Sorry about that. But the idea behind it, you could take more hits, 37% more in a white box character. So they're actually tougher in a sense. Who would have thunk it, right? Same thing with the orc. The inflation for the orc to hit the orc is the same thing as the orc hitting you. So it's a wash. You're not getting any benefit right there. And the damage by the orc is 200% more. So Think about that. And you basically, how many hits a fighter can take from a goblin? You could take 100% more hits if you're playing white box. Okay. So let's talk about this stuff. Whoa. It's almost done here, and we're trying to figure out head and tails of what's going on. 5e fighters have a small increase in hitting a goblin, 10%, but the goblin has a 30% increase to hit the fighter. So there's a 133% increase in the damage from the goblin if you're just comparing this to white box, right? Just putting it out there. Goblins in white box of 5e could only take one hit from a fighter. 5e fighters have a larger increase in hitting the orc, 44%. But the orc has about the same increase, 43%. And hitting the fighter with a basically double or 200% increase in the damage, right? Actually, it's more than double, right? Because it's 3, 6, yeah, it's 9. So 200% increase in the amount, right? When compared to the white box fighter. Despite all the advantages the 5e player against his foes, it appears that the white box fighter has the ability to take more hits on average, 37% and 108% more hits. Okay, so which game is more deadly? We've always asked that question. Which game is more deadly? I know 5e, they come blazing in, and it's sort of they can do anything they want, but when you look at it, we haven't done any of the healing or the second winds and all that stuff. I didn't put it in there. But you know that's out there too, because obviously they're taking more hits, right? Let's talk about granularity. Let's boil this down, right? Despite the increase in granularity with 5e mechanics, whether in white box or 5e, fighters kill goblins with one hit. One hit. That's it. Boom. That's all they're going to take. White box fighters can kill an orc with one hit, and fighters can almost take 3 times the amount of hits from either a goblin or an orc. Also, if you look at 5e, fighters need 2 hits to kill an orc in 5e, as opposed to just 1 hit in white box, right? And fighters can take 2 hits from a goblin or an orc, and then they're down. They cannot even take 2 hits. They can take 1 hit. If they take 2, they're going down. Better have a cleric. So this is kind of just like a weird way of looking at all this. I know this is like something that you're kind of like, wow, he went on here. But sometimes you hear people say these things and you say, well, where's the data? Where's the data? Here's the data. I mean, I do a lot of data comparison, and I know Mike's Joyman and a lot of these things. And the idea behind it, it's just fun looking at it because it's the illusion of advantage. When you really get down to it, it's a wash. It's all gone. With that, join in the conversation, write comments. I like to see it, and I will respond. Okay. And if you like this type of stuff, think it's fun, just, obviously give me some ideas. I'd like to think of more things, but I kind of stopped at first level. Going past that would just kind of just more emphasize the point, unless I did a ninth level. It just seemed like kind of crazy. But either way, this has been fun. It's been a mental exercise for me. I kind of like doing these things. With that, have a great day and game on.